For most of modern aviation history, airlines believed they were in a simple business. They sold transportation. Passengers paid for tickets. Aircraft moved people from one place to another. Revenue came from fares, and profit was supposed to emerge through scale. It almost never did. Despite growing demand for air travel over decades, airlines consistently struggled to produce reliable profits. From the late 20th century through the early 2000s, the industry generated enormous revenue but delivered weak returns to investors. Entire airlines collapsed during economic downturns, oil shocks, and geopolitical crises. Even in years of record passenger volumes, margins remained thin. This was not a failure of execution, it was a failure of structure. Airlines operate with unusually rigid cost bases. Aircraft must be purchased or leased years in advance. Pilots, cabin crew, and maintenance staff require extensive training and certification. Labor contracts limit flexibility. Maintenance schedules are mandatory. Airports charge fixed fees. Fuel prices fluctuate based on global commodity markets that airlines cannot control. These costs exist whether a plane is full or nearly empty. Ticket prices, by contrast, are extremely flexible. Consumers compare fares instantly. Online booking platforms reward the lowest price. Loyalty erodes quickly when competitors undercut by small amounts. Airlines face intense pressure to discount, even when costs rise. This mismatch created a chronic imbalance. Costs were fixed. Prices were fluid. As a result, airlines could expand routes, increase capacity, and grow passenger numbers while still destroying shareholder value. Volume did not guarantee profitability. By the early 2000s, the consequences became unavoidable. Legacy airlines in the United States and Europe entered bankruptcy or restructuring. Low-cost carriers intensified price competition. After the September 11th attacks, demand collapsed, while costs remained locked in. Several governments intervened to prevent national carriers from failing. The industry faced a fundamental problem. Selling flights alone was not enough. The transformation that followed did not arrive as a single strategy or coordinated plan. It emerged gradually, driven by necessity rather than vision. The first major change appeared in the form of fees. In the mid-2000s, airlines began charging for services that had previously been included in the ticket price. The most visible example was checked baggage. Initially, baggage fees were framed as temporary responses to rising fuel costs. Heavier aircraft consumed more fuel. Charging for bags was described as a way to align costs with usage. The real impact was financial. Baggage fees required almost no additional infrastructure. The operational process already existed. The marginal cost of charging was minimal. The revenue was immediate and recurring. Passengers objected. Complaints were widespread. But behavior barely changed. By 2010, airlines in the United States were collecting billions of dollars annually from baggage fees. By 2019, that figure exceeded $5.7 billion. Similar patterns emerged in Europe and Asia. The industry learned an important lesson. Passengers disliked fees, but they tolerated them. That realization opened the door to broader unbundling. Seat selection became optional and monetized. Boarding order turned into a purchasable advantage. Change fees, flexibility, and same-day switches acquired price tags. Extra legroom was separated from standard seating. Lounge access became a recurring subscription rather than an elite privilege. The ticket itself was deliberately stripped down. Airlines discovered they could advertise lower base fares while recovering margin through add-ons. Customers focused on the headline price, then paid incrementally to reconstruct the experience they previously assumed was included. Flying did not fundamentally improve or deteriorate. The pricing architecture changed. But even this visible transformation was not the most important shift. The most significant change occurred in the background, largely unnoticed by passengers. Airline loyalty programs evolved from marketing tools into financial engines. Originally, frequent flyer programs were designed to reward repeat customers. Miles encouraged loyalty. Rewards reinforced brand attachment. Their value depended on passengers flying often and redeeming seats. Over time, airlines recognized a more powerful opportunity. Credit card issuers wanted loyalty points. Banks discovered that airline miles were highly effective customer acquisition tools. They offered large sign-up bonuses and everyday spending rewards, paying airlines upfront for each mile issued. The bank carried the long-term liability. The airline received immediate cash. This changed airline economics fundamentally. Miles were sold in bulk, often years before redemption. Revenue became predictable and front-loaded. Profit margins increased significantly. The loyalty division no longer depended on route performance or passenger volume. By the late 2000s, loyalty programs had become some of the most profitable components of major airlines. At American Airlines, analysts estimated that the A Advantage program alone generated billions of dollars annually. Delta Airlines reported that its SkyMiles program contributed a substantial share of operating income. United Airlines followed a similar model. In some cases, analysts argued that the loyalty business was more valuable than the airline's aircraft operations. Then came 2020. Global air travel collapsed almost overnight. Borders closed, demand evaporated, aircraft were grounded, ticket revenue disappeared. Yet several major airlines survived without flying. They did so by borrowing against their loyalty programs. Airlines securitized future miles sales using loyalty cash flows as collateral. Investors were willing to lend because these programs were stable, contractual, and largely independent of passenger volume. Credit card spending continued even when planes remained idle. In some cases, loyalty programs were valued higher than the airline's market capitalizations at the time. This moment clarified the industry's transformation. Airlines were no longer primarily transportation companies. They were financial platforms with aircraft attached. The implications extended beyond balance sheets. By the early 2000s, ancillary revenue, including baggage fees, seat upgrades, loyalty partnerships, and branded credit cards, accounted for more than 40% of total revenue at many major carriers. These revenues were high margin and scalable. Unlike ticket sales, they did not require additional fuel burn, new aircraft, or more crew. Passengers experienced the shift differently. Flying became more fragmented. Base fares appeared cheaper, but total trip costs increased. Travelers paid to sit together, paid to board earlier, paid to change plans, paid to avoid inconvenience. Complaints became routine. The experience felt transactional. But demand persisted. Customers adapted. Loyalty credit cards proliferated. Points became aspirational currencies. Travelers accepted complexity in exchange for perceived flexibility. Airlines learned another lesson. Customer dissatisfaction did not necessarily reduce revenue. What mattered was optionality. By unbundling services, airlines created a pricing structure that allowed customers to self-select into higher spending tiers. The base product remained competitive on price. The premium experience became modular. This model spread globally. European carriers adopted similar fee structures. Low-cost airlines refined the approach further. Full-service international airlines embraced ancillary revenue as margins tightened. The airline industry did not become more efficient at flying. It became more efficient at charging. Today, airlines remain vulnerable to fuel volatility, geopolitical instability, and economic cycles. Aircraft are still capital-intensive. Labor remains complex. Disruptions still ripple quickly through operations. But the business model has fundamentally changed. Revenue is diversified. Cash flow is smoother. Profitability depends less on ticket pricing and more on financial architecture. The aircraft still takes off. Passengers still board. But the economics of the journey begin long before the gate. The modern airline does not rely on selling flights to survive. It relies on selling access, flexibility, and future promises. Transportation became optional. Finance became foundational.